Did you know that a simple cup of spearmint tea could reduce testosterone levels by up to 30% in women with PCOS in just 30 days?
Wait, hold on. Before you all rush to your kitchen cabinets, this isn't just another internet health trend. We're talking about actual peer-reviewed research from prestigious medical journals showing real hormonal changes.
That's right, and if you're one of the millions of women worldwide struggling with PCOS symptoms like unwanted hair growth, irregular periods, or hormonal acne, you're going to want to stick around for the next few minutes because what we're about to share could be a game changer.
We've got science-backed evidence, real numbers, and most importantly, practical advice you can actually use. So grab your favorite beverage, maybe even some spearmint tea, and let's dive in.
Hello, and welcome back to Healthy Food to Eat podcast. I'm your host, and I'm here with my co-host today.
Hey everyone, we're so glad you're joining us. This is the show where we dig deep into the science behind functional foods and natural remedies that can actually make a difference in your health.
No fluff, no miracle cures, no my grandmother's secret recipe stories, just solid research and practical advice you can trust.
Today, we're exploring something that's been gaining attention in the PCOS community. And honestly, when I first heard about it, I was pretty skeptical. Spearmint tea for hormonal balance? It sounded too simple to be true.
But then we started looking at the research, and wow, the evidence is actually quite compelling. We're going to break it all down for you, including exactly how much you need to drink, what to expect, and yes, the potential side effects too.
All right, let's start with the basics. Before we can understand how spearmint tea might help, we need to understand what's actually going wrong in PCOS.
Absolutely. PCOS, polycystic ovary syndrome, affects up to 20% of women of reproductive age. That's roughly 1 in 5 women. But here's what's interesting. It's not really about the ovaries having cysts, despite the name.
Right. The core issue is hormonal imbalance, specifically elevated androgens. Those are typically male hormones like testosterone. Now, all women naturally produce some testosterone, but in PCOS, these levels can be significantly higher than normal.
And this is where things get really frustrating for women with PCOS. These elevated androgens can cause what doctors call hyperandrogenic symptoms. Think unwanted facial hair, hair loss on the scalp, acne, and irregular or absent periods.
Let me ask you this, and I want our listeners to really think about this. How many conventional treatments for PCOS actually address the root cause versus just managing symptoms?
That's such a good question. Most conventional approaches focus on birth control pills to regulate cycles, metformin for insulin resistance, and anti-androgen medications. All valuable tools, but they're essentially managing the condition rather than addressing why these hormone levels are elevated in the first place.
Exactly. And this is where natural approaches like spearmint tea become really interesting because they might actually influence the underlying hormonal pathways.
So let's dive into the research. The first major study that caught our attention was published in Phytotherapy Research in 2010. This was a randomized controlled trial, which is the gold standard in medical research.
This study followed 42 women with PCOS and hirsutism. That's the medical term for excessive hair growth. Half the women drank spearmint tea twice daily for 30 days, and half drank a placebo tea for 30 days.
And the results, free and total testosterone levels were significantly reduced in the spearmint tea group compared to the placebo group. We're talking about statistically significant changes in just 30 days.
But here's what I find fascinating. It wasn't just about lowering the bad hormones. The women drinking spearmint tea also showed increases in luteinizing hormone and follicle-stimulating hormone.
For our listeners who might not be familiar with these hormones, LH and FSH are produced by your pituitary gland, and they're essential for normal ovarian function and regular menstrual cycles.
So spearmint tea wasn't just suppressing testosterone, it was actually supporting the body's natural hormone production pathways. That's pretty remarkable for something you can buy at the grocery store.
Now, let me ask you something, and listeners, I want you to think about this too. What do you think happened to the women's actual symptoms during this 30-day period?
That's where it gets interesting. The women reported subjective improvements in their hirsutism. They felt like their unwanted hair growth was improving, but when researchers measured it objectively using something called the Ferriman-Galway score, there wasn't a significant difference yet.
And the researchers explained this beautifully. They said the relationship between hormone levels and visible changes in hair growth takes time. Hair follicles have their own growth cycles, and you need several months to see major visible changes.
Think about it this way. If you're dealing with hormonal hair growth, those hairs didn't appear overnight, and they're not going to disappear overnight either, even if your hormone levels improve quickly.
But that study wasn't the only one. There's been additional research that's really helped us understand how spearmint works at a molecular level.
Right. A study published in Ovarian Research in 2020 used animal models to really dig into the mechanisms. They found that spearmint extract at doses of 40 milligrams per kilogram body weight significantly reduced testosterone levels in PCOS-induced rats.
Now, before anyone starts calculating rat doses for humans, please don't do that. Animal studies help us understand mechanisms, but dosing is completely different between species.
Absolutely. But what's valuable from this research is understanding that spearmint contains compounds with genuine anti-androgen activity. We're not just talking about a placebo effect here.
And the researchers identified that spearmint's effects seem to work through multiple pathways. It's not just blocking testosterone, it's actually influencing the enzymes involved in androgen synthesis.
And here's something I found really intriguing. In traditional medicine systems like traditional Chinese medicine and Ayurveda, mint species have been used for centuries to address what we might now recognize as hormonal imbalances in women.
It makes you wonder how many of these traditional uses had real biological basis that we're just now understanding through modern research methods.
Question for our listeners. Have you ever noticed that some of the most effective natural remedies are often the simplest ones? Not exotic superfoods from remote locations, but common herbs that grow practically anywhere?
Now, let's get practical. The Cleveland Clinic, which is one of the most respected medical institutions in the world, actually has spearmint tea listed as a beneficial intervention for PCOS symptoms.
And they're very specific about dosing. According to their review of the research, the effective dose used in studies was about 5 grams of dried spearmint tea per day.
To put that in perspective, that's equivalent to about 3-4 standard tea bags daily. Most studies had participants drinking it twice a day, so maybe 2 cups with 1 to 2 tea bags each.
Now here's something important. The Cleveland Clinic notes that for most healthy adults, drinking multiple cups of spearmint tea daily appears to be safe with minimal risks.
But, and this is crucial, they also identify specific groups who should be cautious or avoid spearmint tea altogether.
Right. Women who are pregnant or breastfeeding should consult with their healthcare provider first. There's limited safety data for these populations.
They also recommend caution for people with gastroesophageal reflux disease, that's GERD, kidney function issues, or liver problems.
The reason is that excessive amounts of spearmint tea could potentially worsen these conditions. It's a perfect example of why even natural remedies need to be used thoughtfully.
Let me ask you this, and listeners, I want you to really consider this. How often do you see natural health recommendations that actually include specific contraindications and dosing guidelines?
That's such a good point. A lot of natural health information online is very general. But when major medical institutions like Cleveland Clinic are providing specific dosing recommendations, that tells us the research base is pretty solid.
So let's talk about realistic expectations. One thing I really appreciate about the spearmint tea research is that it gives us clear timelines for different types of improvements.
The hormonal changes, reduced testosterone, increased LH and FSH, these were measurable within 15 days and became more significant by 30 days in the main study.
But the subjective improvements in symptoms like hirsutism were reported starting around day 15 to 20, even though objective measurements didn't show significant changes until later.
And this makes sense when you think about it biologically. Your body can adjust hormone production relatively quickly, but changing hair growth patterns, clearing up hormonal acne, or regularizing menstrual cycles, these take months, not weeks.
The researchers actually recommended that future studies should run for at least 3 to 6 months to capture the full clinical benefits, even though the hormonal benefits start much sooner.
Here's a question for our listeners. When you're dealing with a chronic condition like PCOS, how important is it to have realistic expectations about timelines for improvement?
I think this is so important because unrealistic expectations lead to people giving up on interventions that might actually be helping. If you're expecting dramatic results in 2 weeks, you might quit just before the real benefits start showing up.
Exactly. And with PCOS, we're often dealing with symptoms that took months or years to develop. so expecting them to resolve in days just isn't realistic.
But here's what's encouraging. Unlike some natural remedies where you might be waiting 6 months to see if anything is happening, with spearmint tea, you can actually track hormonal changes relatively quickly if you're working with a healthcare provider.
One thing I find really interesting is how spearmint tea compares to other natural PCOS interventions in terms of research quality and specificity.
Right. A lot of PCOS natural treatments have very general claims, supports hormonal balance, or promotes regular cycles. But spearmint tea research actually shows specific, measurable hormonal changes.
And the mechanism is pretty clear. We're not talking about some vague adaptogenic effect. Spearmint appears to have genuine anti-androgenic activity through specific biochemical pathways.
It's also worth noting that spearmint tea can potentially be used alongside other PCOS interventions. It's not like you have to choose between spearmint tea or metformin or dietary changes.
That's a great point. In fact, some of the more recent research has looked at spearmint in combination with other natural interventions, like flaxseed, and found synergistic effects.
Although, I want to emphasize, if you're taking any prescription medications for PCOS, definitely talk to your healthcare provider before adding spearmint tea as a regular intervention.
Absolutely. Even though spearmint tea is generally safe, it is having measurable hormonal effects, and your doctor needs to know about anything that might influence your hormone levels.
Let me ask our listeners this. How comfortable are you with monitoring your own response to natural interventions? Do you track symptoms, work with healthcare providers to monitor hormone levels, or do you tend to just try things and see how you feel?
That's such an important question because PCOS management really benefits from some objective tracking, whether that's hormone tests, symptom diaries, or regular check-ins with healthcare providers.
All right, let's get into the nitty-gritty of actually using spearmint tea as part of a PCOS management plan.
First, let's talk about sourcing. You want organic spearmint tea from reputable brands. Spearmint is different from peppermint. Make sure you're getting the right thing.
The species name you're looking for is Mentha spicata, that's spearmint. Peppermint is Mentha piperata, and while it has its own benefits, the anti-androgenic research is specifically on spearmint.
For preparation, you want to use boiling water and steep for 5 to 7 minutes to extract the beneficial compounds. Don't just dip the tea bag and remove it, let it really brew.
Timing-wise, the research protocols typically had participants drinking it twice daily. Many people find it helpful to have 1 cup in the morning and 1 in the evening.
Now here's something practical. Spearmint tea is naturally caffeine-free, so it won't interfere with your sleep if you drink it later in the day.
And it's naturally sweet and refreshing, so you don't need to add anything to make it palatable. That's helpful if you're also managing insulin resistance, which is common with PCOS.
One tip I've seen from women who use spearmint tea regularly, they often brew a larger batch and drink it both hot and iced throughout the day to reach that 5-gram daily target.
That's smart, because drinking 3 to 4 cups of hot tea every single day might get old. But if you can vary it with iced versions, it's much more sustainable.
Here's a question for our listeners. When you're implementing a new health routine, what strategies help you stick with it long-term? Because consistency is really key with something like spearmint tea.
That's so important. This isn't a take it when you remember kind of intervention. The research shows benefits with regular, consistent use over time.
Now, let's address the elephant in the room. What about side effects, and who shouldn't use spearmint tea?
The good news is that spearmint tea has a pretty favorable safety profile for most people. The clinical studies didn't report any serious adverse effects at the therapeutic doses.
But we do need to be aware of the contraindications. As we mentioned earlier, pregnancy and breastfeeding are question marks because there's limited safety data.
The concern with pregnancy is that very large doses of spearmint might potentially affect the uterus, according to some older animal studies, so it's just better to be cautious.
For people with GERD, spearmint can potentially relax the lower esophageal sphincter, which might worsen reflux symptoms.
And for those with kidney or liver issues, the concern is that excessive amounts of any herbal tea can potentially stress these organs, especially if they're already compromised.
It's also worth mentioning that some people might experience mild digestive upset when first starting spearmint tea, especially if they're drinking larger amounts.
Usually, this resolves within a few days as your body adjusts, but if you experience persistent nausea or stomach upset, you might need to reduce the amount or discontinue use.
Here's something important. If you're taking any medications that affect hormone levels, blood sugar, or blood pressure, definitely check with your healthcare provider first.
Even though spearmint tea is natural, it's having real physiological effects, and those effects could potentially interact with medications.
Question for our listeners.
How do you approach the balance between trying natural remedies and working with conventional healthcare providers? Because ideally, these approaches should complement each other, not compete.
Before we wrap up the main content, I want to touch on some of the other potential benefits of spearmint tea that might be relevant for women with PCOS.
Right. The Cleveland Clinic mentions that spearmint tea contains rosmarinic acid, which has anti-inflammatory and antioxidant properties.
This is potentially relevant for PCOS because chronic low-grade inflammation is thought to play a role in the development and persistence of PCOS symptoms.
There's also some preliminary research suggesting that spearmint might help with insulin sensitivity, which is crucial since insulin resistance is common in PCOS.
And some studies have looked at spearmint's effects on blood pressure and cardiovascular health, which is important since women with PCOS have higher risks for heart disease and metabolic syndrome.
Now, I want to be clear. These additional benefits are less well studied than the anti-androgenic effects, but they suggest that spearmint tea might offer multiple pathways of benefit for PCOS.
It's also worth noting that for many women, just having a healthy, hydrating beverage ritual can be beneficial for stress management and overall well-being.
That's such a good point. Sometimes we focus so much on the biochemical effects that we forget about the psychological and lifestyle benefits of healthy rituals.
All right, let's pull all of this together. What have we learned about spearmint tea and PCOS?
First, the research is genuinely promising. We have randomized controlled trials showing that spearmint tea can significantly reduce testosterone levels and improve other hormone markers in women with PCOS.
The effective dose appears to be about 5 grams of dried spearmint daily. That's roughly 3 to 4 tea bags, consumed as 2 cups throughout the day.
The hormonal benefits can be measured within 15 to 30 days, but clinical improvements in symptoms like hirsutism may take several months to become apparent.
It's generally safe for healthy adults, but there are specific contraindications. Pregnancy, breastfeeding, GERD, kidney issues, and liver problems are all reasons to be cautious or avoid it altogether.
And this is crucial. Spearmint tea isn't a magic bullet. It's one tool that can be part of a comprehensive PCOS management approach that might include dietary changes, exercise, stress management, and medical interventions.
What I find most compelling is that, unlike a lot of natural health claims, the spearmint tea research is specific, measurable, and reproducible. We're not talking about vague, hormone support. We're talking about documented reductions in testosterone levels.
And unlike some natural remedies that require expensive supplements or hard-to-find ingredients, spearmint tea is accessible, affordable, and sustainable for most people to use long-term.
But remember, if you have PCOS and you're considering adding spearmint tea to your routine, especially if you're taking any medications, talk to your healthcare provider first.
They can help you monitor your response, potentially track hormone levels, and make sure spearmint tea fits appropriately into your overall treatment plan.
The bottom line, spearmint tea appears to be a scientifically supported, accessible, and generally safe natural intervention that could be a valuable addition to PCOS management for many women.
So, what's your next step? If this episode resonated with you and you're dealing with PCOS symptoms, consider having a conversation with your healthcare provider about spearmint tea.
Take the specific research we've discussed today. Mention the randomized controlled trial, the dosing information from Cleveland Clinic, and ask whether spearmint tea might be appropriate for your specific situation.
If your provider gives you the green light, start slowly. Maybe begin with 1 cup daily for the first week to see how your body responds, then work up to the research-supported dose of 2 cups daily.
Keep a simple symptom diary. Track things like energy levels, sleep quality, skin changes, and menstrual cycle patterns. It might take a few months to see major changes, but having your own data will be valuable.
And remember, this is just one episode in your health journey. If you found this information helpful, we dive deep into evidence-based nutrition and natural health topics in every episode.
Subscribe to Healthy Food to Eat podcast wherever you listen to podcasts and hit that notification bell so you don't miss our latest episodes.
We love hearing from our listeners. If you try spearmint tea or have questions about today's episode, reach out to us on social media or leave us a review.
Most importantly, remember that managing PCOS is a marathon, not a sprint. Be patient with yourself. work with qualified healthcare providers, and celebrate the small improvements along the way.
Until next time, keep exploring the fascinating world of food as medicine, and remember, your health journey is uniquely yours, but you don't have to navigate it alone.
Thanks for listening to Healthy Food to Eat podcast. Take care of yourselves, and we'll see you in the next episode.